I heard they can turn into any animal. It could be a bear, deer, it could be a dog, a coyote. I've heard a lot of times that these guys will kill someone they love the most, having sex with a corpse, doing something that's really bad. Being one of these, you gotta have a really bad heart to do something like this. In November 1996, I had a supernatural experience. I went to my grandma's. She's Navajo, on a Navajo reservation. It's a small little town. Well, not really a town. It's north of Holbrook, Arizona, maybe 45 minutes north. She lives in the middle of nowhere. And I went out there, and for a couple of days I had fun, hiking the hills and just relaxing. One night, I believe it was a Wednesday, the middle of November. It was about 4:30 or 5 o'clock. I seen a bunch of cars driving on the road. The road's about probably maybe 3 football fields away, but you get a good vantage point. And I saw like 5 of them, and they were driving all weird. They were driving like they were drunk. They would stop and go, revving their engines, and all of them kept going. One of them stopped at the entrance to our place and let someone off. I mean, what it kind of seemed like to me, it let someone off. The door opened, but I didn't really see anybody. And the rest of the cars, they all kept driving, but at this intersection, they all went different directions. A lot of dirt roads out there. Houses are apart, like miles apart. And it gets dark in November early, so I didn't think much about it. I was waiting for someone to show up at the house. No one ever did. And it got dark, and my grandparents went to sleep. It was just me and my grandparents. And they went to sleep early, and it was at nighttime, so I'm not gonna go to sleep early. So the windows are all open, and I was just reading. That's all I was doing, with the radio on. And that's when the dogs started barking at something, which is no big deal because there's cattle, there's horses, there's coyotes. They're always barking at something. And I thought maybe it was cattle. They were really barking at something. Then, as I was reading, things got weird. Whatever they were barking, the 3 dogs were barking at something. It was going away from the house, far away. Then it would come back, close to the house. Then it would do it again. It would go far away. Then it would come back. And they're really chasing something, really onto something. Finally, they were really barking at something, like they were on it. And all of a sudden, all 3 dogs quit barking. And that's when it hit me. I was like, that's not normal. Like, how can 3 dogs just stop barking? Unless someone killed them. But I didn't hear any cries or anything. It just flat out quit barking. So I kept reading. I know I paused for a little bit, thinking about it. And I was like, maybe it's nothing. I kept reading. And finally, I had that feeling I'm being watched, because the windows are open. It's pitch black, it's cold, it's windy, it's raining. And it's just, you could hear the wind hitting against the house. So I went outside. I went outside with the flashlight, and I was looking around. I could see the 3 dogs right by the door. And we had a house cat. It was with them too. I thought it was kind of weird. And our door had a porch light, all that. And so I walked around with my flashlight. Like instinct kind of took over. Like there's something out there. Look around, look behind your back. So I'm looking around with the flashlight. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna walk right back into the door. So right when I was heading to the door, I wasn't too far, like maybe a couple yards away. Out walks this black cat. Now this black cat just came out. It looked like a tomcat, big black, furs everywhere, like it didn't take care of itself. But when it walked out, in my view, it didn't look at me. It was looking the other way, which I thought was weird. Like if it's a wild cat, it's not gonna live too long out on a reservation because foxes will get it, too many predators. Finally, I had my flashlight on it and it turns its head. When it turns its head, it has its face. I could see a little human face on the black cat's face. And I had my flashlight on it. I'm only like maybe 4 or 5 yards away from it. And I'm standing above it and it's looking up at me. And I have my flashlight right in its face and I'm trying to compute, what is this? I kept looking at it and it's looking back at me, but my flashlight's right in its face, so maybe it can't see me. And I could see a mouth, I could see a nose, I could see a brow, and it's brown around its face, then the black hair starts growing around its face. And I kept looking at it and I just could not take my eyes off it. I'm trying to tell myself, what kind of animal is this? Is this a raccoon? And I kept looking at it, but it just has such a human face. And finally, I'm in the eeriness, and like it was just so cold and windy, like I didn't even hear anything. It was just like time stopped. And it was just quiet. It was just between me and whatever that thing is looking at each other. It's looking at me. It's like somebody has to make the move. So when I had a flashlight in my right hand, I switch over to my left hand. And I squat down and grabbed a piece of firewood, not taking my eyes off the creature. I grabbed the firewood and I want to smash it, but I'm still freaked out by what I've seen. So I kind of just threw it by its feet and the thing didn't even jump. It just kind of like keeps looking at me like it's not afraid of me. And finally, after the wood was at its feet, it just kind of walked off. Like it wasn't interested in me anymore. And it just walked into the hills. There's a trail that goes. And you gotta remember the dogs are right there and they're not doing anything. They're not helping me. It walks away. Part of me wanted to keep chasing it. Like, how dare you come bother me? But I'm by myself. Like, what's gonna happen if I chase it by myself? So I go inside, I run inside, I look at the clock, and it's 7:25, so it's still early. And I wake up my grandparents, and they're in deep sleep, and they're like looking at me all weird. And I told them I made devil horns. That's what I did. And they knew what I saw. They knew whatever it was. They knew about it. And I told them I saw it outside, and then I start closing the curtains, and my grandma starts closing the curtains. Yeah, my grandfather comes up and he talks to me, and next thing you know, they're putting powder on me. I think corn pollen. I think that's what the Navajos use. They put that on me, and I was just blown away. Like I was just staring into the fire, just couldn't believe what I saw. And I gotta say, maybe like an hour, my whole body was just shaking, trembling. I'm thinking from shock because my legs were just shaking and my arms were shaking and I couldn't stop it. Like it took a while for it to stop. But yeah, I'll never forget that night. And now when I go out there, I always bring, I'm always locked and loaded with the rifle all the time.
My most memorable experience with paranormal, supernatural, was when I was just a very small child. I was maybe 6, 7 years old. And I grew up in Staten Island, New York. I was born in '69, so this was like in the mid-'70s or so. And at that time, they still had they had the older houses that were built like in the 30s, 40s, and they were huge mansions by any definition, by today's standards. Anybody that owned those houses obviously had them bought out, and they would put up apartment complexes and such in that footprint because it was so enormous. But it was a wonderful experience for a kid. Plenty of yard to run around in, plenty of different rooms to play in and such. It was great. And I had a friend who lived in the house next door, again, a 3-story, and again, a very old house, even in that era. And the legend had it, unbeknownst to me at the time, of course, but that there had been a family that lived in that house, and they were, by all indications, a relatively normal family, but there was some issues with mental health. And we know that one of the family members actually committed suicide, hanged herself in the garage. And after that, again, the story was that other family members they had problems of their own, and compounding with the fact that they'd had a suicide amongst their loved ones, started to behave in odd ways. And there was a lot of customizing of the house for reasons that don't make a lot of sense by most standards. I remember that my friend invited me over to show me one of these. And it was like in a bad horror movie where you press on the panel on the wall, and this door would open, like an Amityville movie or something like that. And inside were crawl spaces that were big enough for kids, oddly shaped. It clearly wasn't a storage of any sort. The only thing that made sense was this was a way of getting from one room to another without being seen. Why somebody would do this with false walls and things and shortening it. Like I said, this is a huge house. So when the rooms were that big, you could build a false wall and nobody would ever question the size of the room. It would still be pretty good by, even the standards of the time. And so, we'd go through all this, and it was kind of, it was fun. It was great. The stories about, the family kind of were put aside. There were people in the neighborhood that would bring that up occasionally, but my friend obviously was my age as well, 6, 7 years old, and so the family didn't make a big thing to him. So, we weren't sitting around talking about that being the spooky house or the ghost house or any of that stuff. It was just this was a cool place for kids to be playing. But there was a presence there, and I don't know if I was just sensitive to it or I had some other connection that I can't wrap my mind around to this day. But there were times we'd be playing in either my yard or my friend Sean's yard, and I would hear voices, and the layout of the yard, it was not possible that it was one of the other neighbors that was saying something, because they would be speaking at a level that they had to have been literally right there. But there's nobody there. So, if somebody's in the next yard, they're yelling and screaming. You can tell the difference. Somebody was talking in my ear. And again, I'm just kind of dismissing it, and it's like, whatever. And then one day, I was in the yard, my grandparents' yard, looking over the fence toward my friend's house. And this was a 3-story house. It was 2 stories, and then it kind of like an Amityville horror attic where you could walk in, and that's an extra room up there. And I looked up into that upper window, and there was the full image of a woman standing there, dressed in very old clothing, just very disheveled, not scary, not just kind of staring at me. And I was not scared or fearful or anything like that at the time. It was more just like we made a weird connection where it just struck me that, looking back at it now, she was clearly just trying to make contact with a human being, and for whatever reason, I was that human being that I was able to make this connection with her. And she stared at me for what seemed like an eternity, and I would move, and the eye line would move, and I'd move back, and the eye line would... I couldn't escape it. And after a while, it's kind of like, okay, this is starting to creep me out, and I would get away from there. And later on, I would tell that story to people, and some people would say, well, what did the woman look like? And I would describe the woman to people. And, you know, my parents would obviously just kind of minimize it, and it's not a big thing. But later on, other people would come to me and they say, what you described was the woman who hanged herself in the garage. To a T. I had never seen her. At that point, I'd never heard that story. I didn't know somebody had hanged themselves in the garage. But I saw her, and she saw me. And it's the sort of thing I will never forget.
Hi, my name is Sarah Schultz. My husband and I have a paranormal investigation team called the Haunted Honeymooners. Back in 2018, a year after we got married, we went on our honeymoon to the most haunted places in America. The place that I connected to the most was the Villisca Axe Murder House. The original flooring is there in the house. Such a beautiful house. It's 2 stories. There is a man named Johnny Hauser that now owns the house, and he took us on our tour for our overnight. It was Josh, myself, and our friend Michael. He was our extra cameraman, so we did an overnight there. We read about the house, super creepy. A family was killed there. Very unfortunate. It was June 10th, 1912, when all this happened. There were 2 young girls that were staying the night that were the neighbors' kids downstairs, but the axe murder started upstairs with the family. So he started with the parents, then he moved into the next room with the children. The babies were in their crib. Then he made his way downstairs. They found raw bacon everywhere the next morning, as well as an axe and blood everywhere. He axed the whole family to death. And even in the ceiling, you'll see a cut where he leaned back with the axe, and then he's just chopped up the dad and then the mom. I don't understand how the girls downstairs didn't hear any of this, but they didn't, because they were sound asleep when he went down there. They say that he was most likely possessed, but they don't know who actually did it. They think maybe it was a transient, or maybe it was a neighbor, or it was a minister. They still don't know. As far as I know, I believe that the case is still open, and they still don't know who killed the family. Villisca, Iowa is a very small, quaint town. There's not a lot of people there. And when we arrived, it's very farmy, it's very country. There was actually a man on a tractor that we drove by. We went to the general store. It's the only store that they have out there, literally the only store. So we drove by, and he was on a tractor, and he had bright blue eyes. It was literally out of something like The Crazies. It was insane. He was looking right up at the sky, and he was just driving his tractor. And I'm like, oh my God, did you see that? Like, I wish I had my camera on. And Josh was like, oh my gosh, this is a creepy little town. So everyone was really nice in the general store, and they found out why we were there. And they're like, oh, you're gonna stay at the Axe Murder House, like, you know, spooky. So when you're driving down the street, everyone literally will come out of their house and watch you. And I'm like, this is literally out of a movie. It's so insane. Super creepy. So we get there, and there's a little barn behind the house, and it's very cute, and there's an upstairs. You'll find videos, you'll find a TV, you put the VHS tapes in, and it has pictures of the family that got murdered there. And then it has like music behind it, and it's just a barn, and it's like, where did this stuff come from? We can't even find the song on the interwebs. Like, I don't know where this song came from, but it's about the house. Super creepy. So we go into the barn, we do a little bit of investigating, we have all the nature, the spiders, and you know, we hear the crickets and the sun's going down. So we go inside the house. It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, but it's creepy. There's pictures of the family that got killed all over the walls. We get there, and there's a red ball. So there's balls everywhere. So apparently when people go to visit, they leave balls. They leave presents everywhere for the kids. So there was a red ball. So I sat down on the floor. I was like, if anyone is here, if you can push the ball back to me. So I push it across the floor. It stops, literally rolls right back to me. And I'm looking around. I'm like, really? This is crazy. So Josh touches the floor and he's like, there's no way that this is just gonna roll back to you. It has to be pushed by force. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I was like, is it one of the kids that lived here? So I'm pushing it. I was like, push it back to me if it is. And it's just going in a circle. And I'm like, what is happening? It was so crazy. So then we learned that the house is on an Indian burial ground as well. So there's so much going on there. There's like possession, there's evil spirits, death, murder. The kids live that hell every day, every single day. And I believe it was 2 a.m. when all of this went down. So the person who murdered everyone was in the closet upstairs. So when you go to the closet upstairs, it's in between the parents' room and then the kids' room. And it's one of those closets that it's like an attic. So you have to duck down to get in there. So they have a bell attached to it. So that kind of brings the spirits out. Like if someone's here, open up the door and then you'll know. There's tons of toys in there as well. We go into the attic and there's a toy in there. There's a toy dog. And we were talking to it and then it just started going off by itself. We got everything on video, everything. So we were super shocked that even happened. We're like, oh my God, it's literally talking to us right now. So we have cameras set up everywhere, downstairs and upstairs. So we go explore. So there's the kitchen, that's the door you enter through. And then there's like a little pantry area. And then you have the main room and there's a piano in there. And there's even those mirrors like they have in grocery stores. When you're walking through the store and you look up and it's in the corner, you can see what's going on behind you. They have those in there as well in the main room. And that's where all the balls and stuff are. And Lena and Ina's room, they were the girls who lived next door that were staying the night. There were bells in their room. So we're in the house, we're walking around, and then the bells go off. It makes me emotional and it kind of freaks me out. So then we have to go take a break outside. We take a break outside. We literally recorded everything. So you see me going through the motions. We go to the general store, we come back and we got a toy for the kids and it was a bee. And it was one of those bees you just roll across the floor and then it just kind of takes off. So we bought that for the kids and it's starting to get dark. I get more emotional with the ball. I don't know if it's a demon. I don't know if it's one of the children. I got really angry and then I got really sad. We had to take another break. So I'm having to keep taking breaks because it's just, the energy is just affecting me so hard there because there's just so much that happened and it was just so emotional. Like I got upset because the kids got killed. I'm like, why did they have to get killed? They didn't do anything wrong. Like, what's wrong with you? I was very angry. We put the bee down and we're waiting for the kids to play with it. It doesn't get touched. We're like, okay. So we give it a few minutes. So we go to the next room, Lena and Ina's room. We go in there and try to play with the ball too. Michael is standing there and he's like, I feel something heavy on my shoulders. And we're like, okay. He goes, it feels like a coat is being placed on me. Literally in the camera, you see the bee disappear. Bee's gone. We step out. Michael said it felt hot. We're like, where'd the bee go? So we're searching, can't find it. Go back to Lena and Ina's room. There's the bee. So something literally picked it up and moved it. And Josh was a skeptic. He's my husband. He was a skeptic until we went to that house. He's like, okay, so this is real stuff. So that bee moved. We had bells going off. It was so emotional. I had to leave. We went to the barn several times, took breaks. I'm thinking, can I even go back inside this house? I have no idea. But we did. We went back in. Michael and Josh left money for the kids upstairs. Apparently you can leave money all over the bed. So that's what they did. I heard a drawer slam. And I'm like, oh, we gotta go. We gotta go. And they're like, what's going on? I was like, I can't be here. And I had a crystal around my neck that a friend gave me. And I know that that can absorb energy. So I left that in Lena and Ina's room. A lot happened that night. It was very emotional. It was intense. You could hear things, you could feel things, see things. It just messed with your mind so bad. We ended up going back a couple years later and that necklace was still in the drawer.